Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Factor Talk Radio. I'm Jason Veely, the Untainted Mind. From Wethersfield, Connecticut, I am home on break. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for tuning in. Civility is the name of the game, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard the president time and time again. We just need to be civil. We need to be civil. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? But when chaos is going on, when the unions are rioting in Michigan, when there's potential violence going on, the president is silent. Civility, conservatives, you gotta be civil. But when something happens on our side, don't worry about it. We'll just look past it. Right now on the program, I'd like to introduce you, actually, because this is the first time I think I've had her on. Cindy from Mississippi, and I've had her on in the past when I did my public access talk show for 3 years. But Cindy, I think this is the first time having you on my radio program. It's great to have you.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much for having me. It's good to come on.
No problem. I want to thank you for everything. By the way, Cindy has helped me so much. I mean, she's taught me so much about politics. Whenever I have a question, I ask her on Facebook. And Cindy, so thank you very much for doing that. I just wanted to tell you that right now.
Oh, well, it's an honor and a privilege to be on, and treasure your friendship.
Absolutely. Before we get into it here, I just want to say we are getting some other callers right now. If you're listening to this program, call in after the next commercial break. The number is 205-386-FACTOR, 205-386-FACTOR. Call in after the next commercial break. I'll be happy to take your call. So, Cindy, what is going on in Michigan? I don't understand. Right to Work gives people the choice to decide whether or not they want to be in a union. And I don't see a problem with that.
Well, the whole issue is it's a racket. You've got unions and you've got the union bosses who make their money, who make their living off forcing people to join a union. And it is unconstitutional, in my opinion, that you should be forced to join a union just to get a job.
I agree.
And as it stands right there, you had to get a state job, to get any type of job, you had to be a member of a trade union, which meant you were automatically having to pay large dues and were at the will of that union. And really where a lot of people, where it came into conflict, was unions, instead of representing employees, they became a political machine and started representing political parties.
Right.
And they started representing the Democrats, and you had people who were forced to pay dues to support candidates who they opposed, who represented everything they stood against. And it's been a growing epidemic. You've seen millions. There was a story yesterday where in just the Department of Transportation in the United States, your tax dollars are paying over $4.8 million to fund union bosses.
Unbelievable. It's unconstitutional, too. I completely agree with you on that. It's unconstitutional, and the Founding Fathers would be outraged by this.
Exactly. And unions, they serve a purpose and they serve a point. And there are workers who do need advocacy, but what it has turned into is a mechanism to advance socialism, to advance Marxism. Workers who are a member of the unions, they no longer can be advanced based on individual merit, based on individual achievement. It is all based on the collective system. You become just part of a number, and no longer are your individual accomplishments recognized. And it's
go ahead.
It's based on seniority, and it also facilitates really bad employees keeping their jobs, and really good employees, and it keeps people from getting jobs, because bad employees will keep their jobs strictly because they're union members, while people who are forced to pay dues, who just to get a part-time job, still are not allowed to join the union and therefore do not get benefits. But even if they're not allowed to join, they're still having to pay those dues.
Right. And most of the money that we pay these unions goes to Democrats and Democratic organizations that help get Democrats back in office, right?
Right. The whole purpose initially, was pension plans and insurance, and to ensure employee benefits and those things, which are very noble and worthy things. They're good things. But what's happened is the unions started taking the money that was designated for pensions, and they started putting it into campaigns. And so now what you've got is unions are just funneling money into all the Democratic campaigns, and then in return, they don't have enough money to fund pensions, and the government's turning around and bailing them out.
Right.
And it's unbelievable. And people have a right to political expression, and this is forced political expression because they're being forced to fund a campaign or a candidate with whom they don't agree, simply because they're a member of a union.
Now, what about the hypocrisy that we're seeing from this president? I mean, this just absolutely astounds me. He speaks to conservatives. He called out Rush Limbaugh and says, "Oh, conservatives, you got to be civil." And then Occupy Wall Street, first of all, happens. That went nuts. He didn't say much about that. And then this happens over in Michigan, and he doesn't say anything about that. What do you think about the president's hypocrisy?
He actually endorsed, Occupy Wall Street, made a comment. This is, you are who you are the reason that I ran. And he called out Rush Limbaugh over Sandra Fluke, and has just, anytime there's a conservative issue, he will make a statement on it, but yet he refused to denounce the violence in Michigan, where the Americans Prosperity tent was ripped down with people in it. You had elderly people and women in there who feared for their lives, that felt they were safer in a tent that was being ripped down around them than to go out and face the crowd. You had a conservative commentator who was out begging them to stop and ended up getting beaten on camera. And you have the left, instead of condemning that, turning around and saying, well, he instigated it.
Yep.
It's very alarming. Honestly, you look at any time a dictator or an oppressive regime has risen, and they use the media, and they use they dehumanize, and they take away. They dehumanize, and you look at what the left is doing to conservatives. Oh, well, they deserved it. There was even a comment yesterday that political violence is appropriate if it's for the right cause. In other words, if it's towards conservatives. When we get to a point in our society where we are willing to condone violence towards any group simply because we don't agree with them, then we're on the exact, that's what Hitler did to the Jews.
Right.
He dehumanized, and I'm not saying that we're headed to where Hitler is, but it's the exact same tactics.
Right.
And you see that being employed right now, to where conservatives are dehumanized, and they're justifying violence against conservatives.
Right.
Where there is an overstatement of condemnation against any conservative who stands up.
Right.
Or condemns, or speaks vocally about anything that the liberals do. There's a flood of condemnation.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? Not that this ever would happen, but if something like this did happen in a Tea Party rally, how do you think the media would respond?
Oh, it would have been. It would have been 24/7 coverage. Mm-hmm. They would have had the names, the identities of the conservatives involved.
Yep.
Look at what happened with Sandra Fluke and what happened to Rush. It was headline news for days.
Yep.
And that was just over him, making the statement that he made, and there was no violence involved. I witnessed personally media at Tea Party events just hoping for violence, and also every time there's been a shooting, then the media automatically, first thing they did was check Tea Party rolls to see if the names were on the list.
Mm.
They're almost salivating for it to be a conservative, but if there's an act of violence by a liberal or a leftist group with whom they agree, it's dead silence, just like NBC, ABC, and CBS did not even mention the violence. They completely whitewashed it.
It's unbelievable to me. Between Occupy Wall Street and now these protests going on in Michigan, do you think this is the left wing showing their true colors?
Oh, yes, it is. I saw very similar actions in Wisconsin during the recall election, and this is the true color. This is the true nature of the left. It's been masked by the media, but I think as the economy gets in a more precarious situation, as you see governors, for instance, standing up and having to take the side of the people in their state versus a political side, which is happening. Only 15 states have agreed to do the health care exchange. You're going to see more of a vocal left, and it's going to get harder and harder for the media to whitewash and cover for this, but this is who they are.
Interesting. Us conservatives, we need to continue pointing that out constantly. Now, here's a little two-part question. Do you think that more states are going to continue becoming right-to-work states, and if so, do you think this violence will spread?
I think that many states really are being pushed into a situation to where they don't have a choice. The union contracts, especially, and it's all kind of centered around the public unions, because they had negotiated such lucrative contracts that in the private sector would have never ever been accepted, except maybe in the auto industry. What resulted in the collapse of GM is contracts that were unsustainable, union contracts, and states, cities, and counties are being forced to file bankruptcy, and more states are going to have to go right to work in order to correct this massive and unsustainable, trend that they have developed in making cushy contracts with unions in exchange for political favors. And as now with the economic collapse, I'm concerned about the violence. You never know, but I see, just like Trump, or Hoffa said yesterday, that he predicts a civil war. It's almost like they're trying to start civil unrest, whether or not their membership will follow through with it, because there are a lot of union members who don't agree with the actions of their leadership, and I think that's where you're going to see the divide. In Wisconsin, for instance, once they went to right to work, SEIU, which is one of the largest unions and fastest growing in the country, they lost half of their membership within just a matter of months. They went from having 60,000 members to less than 30,000. Wow. And that's really what the violence is about. It's about the union leadership, because that's money out of their pockets. It's not money out of the members, because they're saving money by leaving the unions, and are discovering that you actually can negotiate a contract based on the merit of your experience and your skills versus because some union guy says he can do a better job.
Right.
And that's what a lot of people are finding out.
So how do us conservatives respond to this?
We just have to continue to, Stephen, handle it the right way. You don't react violently, because then we become no better than them.
Right.
We have to continue to call it out. We have to continue to have video cameras with us and to document what's happening and to get it out. And we have to continue to sound the alarm, because as these incidents happen with the internet and with the alternative conservative media, the left can no longer hide it.
Right.
And the key is we have to share it with our friends, with our neighbors, and we have to let other people know this is happening. It's not, a lot, and we just have to continue to fight harder. But conservatives have got to get involved. People who've been sitting on the sidelines and letting politicians and activists do the jobs for them, there's things that they can do without having to, become involved 24/7. We've got to find our voice, or we're going to lose our country.
All right. It's scary. Cindy, one more quick thing before I let you go here. You're starting your own show, I hear, correctly, right?
Yes, I am. At the beginning of the new year, I'm going to branch out and try and do a radio show. Can't say the name yet or anything, but I will keep you updated and let you know. But at the first of the year, so I should have more details.
Awesome. Yeah. When you get that going, call into my show again. I'll be in touch with you, and I'd love to ask you more about that and try to get you guys out there a little bit, because I think that's great. I think everyone needs to be involved in one way or another, especially people who are passionate about conservatism and people who are passionate about restoring this country.
Absolutely. We have to, we speak now or forever lose your freedom.
Mm-hmm. What kinds of stuff are you going?
Bottom line.
What kinds of stuff are you going to be discussing on your program?
News and politics from a conservative perspective.
Absolutely.
And just to continue to do what you're doing and sound the message, get the word out. We need, strong women on the radio,
mm-hmm.
Sounding their voice, and we need as many people as possible getting out and just making their voice heard and reaching whoever, is willing to listen, to let them know that freedom is at stake. And, we are on the brink of economically and morally, ethically losing our nation.
Yep. Yeah, it's scary. We need to continue fighting. Cindy, thank you for calling to the program tonight. It's always great talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. I'll talk to you soon.
Factor Talk Radio.